You work hard every single day. You earn your paycheck. But every month, a huge portion of that paycheck disappears before you even get to use it. Car payments, credit cards, mortgages, interest on top of interest. Sometimes it feels like you're not working to live. You're working to pay debt. But here's where everything starts to shift. The loan you're struggling so hard to repay was never real money to begin with. And once you understand that, everything you believed about money, banks, debt, and the economy starts to fall apart. Most people spend their entire lives in debt. We buy houses with debt, buy cars with debt, pay for school with debt, and even pay for lunch with borrowed money on a card. But almost no one asks the most basic question. Where does the money I borrowed actually come from? Most people assume banks take money from savers and lend it to borrowers. That sounds logical. But that isn't how modern banking works. And it hasn't been for decades. When you walk into a bank and apply for a loan, the bank doesn't grab money from a vault. They don't take someone else's savings and hand it to you. They don't transfer real money from one pile to another. Instead, they simply create it. When your loan is approved, a bank employee types a few numbers into a computer. A database updates. And at that exact moment, brand new money, money that did not exist 1 second earlier, appears in your account. Your loan wasn't pulled from somewhere. It was created out of nothing with keystrokes as digital credit. And while the bank created that money from thin air, you must repay it with real money. Money you must earn with real hours, real work, real sacrifices. That's the first uncomfortable truth about modern finance. Most of the money in circulation today is created as debt. Not printed, not mined, not saved. Created. Every time a bank issues a loan, money is born. Every time someone repays a loan, money disappears. Money enters the system as debt and leaves the system through repayment. We live in a world where almost every dollar in the economy started as someone else's loan. Your salary, your grocery money, the cash in your wallet, all of it exists because somewhere someone went into debt. This also means something uncomfortable. If everyone paid back their debts at the same time, the entire money supply would vanish. The economy would collapse instantly. That's how dependent the system is on ever-growing debt. This is why the economy must constantly expand. This is why governments push for growth. This is why banks push credit. The system only functions as long as more loans are being created. So how did we end up here? To understand that, you need to know that money used to be backed by gold. $1 represented a claim on a specific amount of gold. The system couldn't inflate endlessly because real physical gold limited the creation of money. But in 1971, President Nixon ended the gold standard permanently. From that moment on, the dollar stopped being a claim on anything real. It became pure fiat, money backed only by belief. And once the dollar was no longer tied to gold, banks gained immense freedom. Money no longer needed to be limited by anything physical. It became digital, conceptual, elastic. The moment money lost its physical anchor, debt became the foundation of the entire system. Governments borrow. Corporations borrow. Consumers borrow. The entire economy runs on credit. This brings us to another truth almost no one talks about. Inflation is not an accident. It's not an economic problem. It's a feature of the system. Because when banks create new money through loans, the total money supply grows. And when more money chases the same number of goods and services, prices rise. That's inflation. But wages don't rise as fast as prices. So year after year, you feel like you're doing everything right. Yet somehow, you're falling behind. You're not imagining it. You're not failing. The system is designed that way. The bank creates your loan from nothing. You repay it with real money. The central bank expands the money supply. Inflation eats your savings. And you're left struggling, working harder, and feeling poorer. Meanwhile, the wealthy aren't struggling in the same system. They're using it. They don't fear debt. They use it to buy assets, real estate, businesses, investments that generate cash. They let inflation work in their favor. They borrow at low interest, buy assets that rise in value, and repay loans with cheaper dollars in the future. The wealthy use the system to build wealth. The poor use the system to survive. You were taught to fear debt. They were taught to use it. You were taught to save money. They were taught that saving loses value. You were taught to pay interest. They were taught to earn it. And this is the part that feels almost unfair. Banks don't earn the most profit from lending real money. They earn the most profit from charging interest on money that never existed. Numbers typed into a computer, numbers you must repay with real effort. You're giving up years of your life to repay a loan that wasn't even real money. You're trading your time, your health, your opportunities for a digital credit the bank created in seconds. Once you see this clearly, you start understanding why everything feels harder, why housing is unaffordable, why college debt explodes, why savings accounts feel useless, why groceries cost more every year, why the middle class feels like it's disappearing. It's not random. It's structural. It's systemic. So what do you do now? You do what the wealthy do. You stop fighting the system and start using it. You invest in assets that benefit from inflation. You build cash flow streams instead of relying solely on a paycheck. You use debt strategically, not to consume, but to grow. You stop thinking of money as something you earn and start thinking of it as something you leverage. Because if the system is creating money out of nothing, you might as well position yourself where that money flows, not where it drains. The truth is simple. The loan you're struggling to repay isn't real money, but the work you're doing to repay it is painfully real. And unless you understand how the system works, you will always be stuck inside it. But once you see the truth, you can play a different game, a smarter game, a game where your money, your time, and your future are no longer swallowed by endless debt. The moment you understand how money is truly created is the moment you stop being controlled by it. And from that moment, everything changes.